So let's start with the NFC North. Detroit Lions. Who do you have as your biggest need for the Detroit Lions and the guy to fill it?
It's funny because the Detroit Lions, they need some offensive line help. Obviously, some pieces have moved around. Some guys are aging. Penei Sewell's the only one that's really a non-question mark, in my opinion. And they were at the end of the first round in my mock draft. And this was one of those picks that ended up being like, oh, my God, Kelvin Banks isn't off the board yet. Oh, my God, going back through all the picks. And I'm like, okay, yeah, he wasn't picked. And who likes to develop offensive line and prides themselves, no pun intended, on having as many readily able and talented offensive lines? The Detroit Lions. So I went with Kelvin Banks in the NFC North. I know I'm going to get spit on for this pick. But at the end of the day, you need guys who can play.
Well, we'll see about Banks because obviously you saw my rankings. I had him at the top. But I've seen rankings where he's not even in the top 30, not even people's first round. The evals on him are all over the map. Seen people calling him a guard. That doesn't make sense to me at all. I think he's a tackle through and through. I mean,
Detroit would find out.
I don't know why you'd put a guy with 7-foot wingspan who's agile inside, but
that sounds like a superpower, a cheat code, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what you want at the tackle position. So I like that. I mean, if he's on the board there, shoot, no brainer. This tackle class is difficult to figure out after, Armand Membu, who I think is going to be a top 10 pick, where all the chips are going to fall. I think, though, for them, I assume Tyler Booker is going to be off the board. I assume Banks is going to be off the board. I assume Josh Simmons is going to be off the board. Like, I assume most of the top guys are off the board, just given how many teams need offensive line. And so I'm looking deeper down the board. I have guards the same, right? This is a team with really no needs. And even guards like Graham Glasgow and Christian Mahogany, I think, are a fine. It's not glaring. It's just Glasgow's kind of at the end of his rope. Mahogany's still unproven, but I liked what I saw from him last year.
He's a good op. He's really good.
Yes.
He's going to be really good, I think.
So I have Jonah Savainaya as the fit for them. Pick 60, the Arizona tackle who, I mean, size-wise, I don't think he necessarily has to move into guard. I just think he's a much, much better guard than he would be an offensive tackle. The guy just looks like how you'd put a guard together. And I just love his feet mirroring ability. I think in pass pro, he's a ready-made guard.
Yeah, it's what stood out to me was his feet. I was texting you, this guy's just buttery smooth with his feet. And yeah, his hands have a lot to be desired. But I remember when I was coming out, I was mirroring everybody with my feet and then hugging them with my upper body. I didn't know what to do with my hands. He'll get a great coach. He'll have the opportunity to develop those hands. He can play inside or outside.
Young guy too. True junior coming out. So if the Lions can nab him, get a couple of Samoans on that offensive line, no one wants to see multiple Samoans on an offensive line.
No. Big, blocky, wide shoulders, wide butts, big calves, big ankles, big wrists, big hands.
Yeah, dude. I had a Samoan on my baseball team growing up who just in 7th, 8th grade would just drop the biggest bombs you've ever seen. And just everything about this guy, like you said, the ankles are just like thick, but not like unathletic the way most people you think with thick ankles. Like the guy who's just a wide human being. I think his dad played O-line for Illinois. Just built different.
Go. It's in the blood.
All right, Minnesota Vikings. I think we agreed here. Cornerback looks like their biggest need at this moment in time. I threw safety in there as well. Obviously losing Cam Bynum. Not really backfilling him via free agency. But right now your corners are Isaiah Rodgers, Jeff Okudah, Kai Blackman, Byron Murphy. That's where you'd want. What did you have going to them in the mock draft?
I went with Jahdae Barron, a cornerback. And, that secondary is always going to be a spot where you want to bolster it, especially in today's football economy. So I figure this guy, Jahdae Barron, will plug right in there, have the opportunity to help early.
I think we have a good tier in this cornerback class where it's Hunter, Will Johnson from Michigan, Jahdae Barron. And then to me, it's like somewhat of a chasm. If you're kind of like how I saw it when, Trent McDuffie came off the board and then Kyer Elam was like the next pick or 2 picks later, that I had just had so much higher a grade on McDuffie. I thought that year McDuffie was just behind just behind Sauce and Stingley. It was Sauce, Stingley, McDuffie just behind them, and then big drop off.
Yeah,
the chasm. That's been proven. That's how I feel about this cornerback class. If you're taking that fourth guy, if you're taking that, whether it's Trey Amos, whoever it may be, CB4 in this class, I think there's a big drop off. So it could be a spot where someone, Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, whichever one falls farther, it could be a spot where one of these CB needy teams, Vikings are one, Packers are one, and the Packers are ahead of the Vikings. So the Vikings could be willing to jump up the same way the Chiefs did with the Buffalo Bills back for Trent McDuffie and go get a Jahdae Barron if he does start to fall. So I like that call out. I'm going to go out, but I don't think he makes it to pick 24 though. Like they would, in my opinion, have to move up.
There's going to be a run on corners early. He's one of the first guys to go right after Hunter and the other guy.
Malachi Starks is who I went with for them. It's just one of my favorite fits. Just a ball player, versatile, fits Brian Flores' defense where if you need him to drop down and play like slot corner, he can. If you need him to play outside corner, I think he could. If you need him to play deep safety, box safety, the guy's just so versatile, such a football player that to me, that's just one of my fits that I'm going to keep saying makes too much sense until, draft day comes, pick 24 passes, and it doesn't happen. Until then.
It's a great name, too. Malachi Starks. He just sounds like a football player.
True. All right, let's get to the Green Bay Packers, where I love that we agreed on this. Wide receiver as the biggest need. I was banging the table for this last year. No one believed me. Now, again, I'm not sure there was someone where they ended up picking that 100% would have been the guy, because obviously they missed Brian Thomas Jr. That would have been nice. But this year, I kind of do think at pick 23 that there will be someone sitting for them. One of those guys, whether it's Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, Tet McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, I think they'll have their choice at least of one of them, if not like three of them on the board there. Who do you got as who you put in the mock draft?
I got Emeka Egbuka.
He's a Packers type, man.
I was also trying to do the Savainaea. These are hard. I don't even like
tongue twisters this year.
I don't even know why I'm in television if I can't even say names. So Emeka Egbuka, Egbuka, and Jonah Savainaea. Savainaea. Okay, see, we're working through this. You guys at home, stick with me here. That's a wide receiver out of Ohio State, and he's a cold weather wide receiver, which is important because in Green Bay, you have to have a little bit of that grit, a little bit of that toughness, and nobody does it better than Ohio State at this current point in time. Like this guy, they need a receiver. There was flurries of jabs coming out of social media in Green Bay this offseason saying we have no true number one wide receiver. The running back room going at the receivers going back at the running back room. Well, let's just add another receiver in there. You know what? If you don't have a true number one, just get 5 number twos, and you have the opportunity to really be a threat.
Well, and what I love about Egbuka and why if he's picked 23, I'd be happy as heck. 5.5% career drop rate. Guy is reliable with his hands. One of the smartest wide receivers in this draft class. They rave about him there at Ohio State. And then the Packers, they're type at wide receiver, which they've rarely strayed from. I think Jaden Reed, one of the few times they ever did. They like guys with size. They draft 5'11 and up, 195 and up. They draft these big body guys who can run slants, who can go across the middle of the football field. Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 205, fits that bill. And that's why in the second round, I went Jaden Higgins, pick 54. I think if he's on the board there now, will he be? I think the Higgins hype's getting to the point where he feels like one of those top of round 2 guys. Your T. Higgins spots, your Michael Pittman spots. He feels like he's kind of in that mold. Probably not as good a prospect as Higgins, but maybe, I feel like he's probably close to a Michael Pittman, and he's got such good hands, man. 3% career drop rate over his career, almost 1,200 yards this past season. I think Jaden Higgins is a very much what the doctor ordered for this Packers receiving core, but we both agree wide receiver is on the prescription list for the Green Bay Packers. Chicago Bears, what do you got? Break it down.
So many ways you could go with this pick, and so many social media GMs. And obviously there's going to be a lot of voices to be heard in Chicago and Hallis Hall about this pick. But you and I got to meet this young man when we were in New Orleans, and we got to interview him. And it was one of the, and I mean this in the most positive football way, it was one of the most boring interviews that you and I have ever done in terms of just the guy was clearly all football. We're going to go with Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State, to plug and play into Ben Johnson's offense and be an immediate big-time contributor for Caleb Williams, that true safety net, that safety blanket that we're always yearning for in Cole Kmet. We're going to find a way to get Cole Kmet continually involved in this offense. But Tyler Warren can be that real explosive piece that's missing in that offense. And I think the Bears, maybe some would call it a reach to go get him at 10. But I think that when he's scoring touchdowns every single week and when he is an absolute ball hog offensively, you're going to love the pick.
I don't think either of these tight ends, if you draft in the top 10, are reaches. I mean, maybe like depending on who's on the board, I might have guys higher, but I think Warren and Loveland are special prospects at the tight end position. And to me, though, I think if you're just setting this offense up and for what Ben Johnson, you're trying to replicate what he had in Detroit, right? Why not?
You want to get Amari Hampton or Ashton Genty.
No, I was saying you want the athlete at tight end. Cole Kmet and Tyler Warren both are like 4'7", 40 type guys, right?
But they can actually block people. And in a tight end economy where all these guys are former basketball players or they're former receivers who were too slow to cut it outside, they get moved inside, they eat a couple cheeseburgers, and they become tight ends. These guys are tight ends. Tyler Warren, he stood next to me. That's a big son of a bitch. And if I was lining up on a double team next to a guy like that, I would like our chances in the run and subsequently in the play action game. And I think with Caleb's ability to get on the edge, they can work some of those leak concepts with him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't need to be the guy that's taking the top off the defense on a 6 or 7-step drop. What I want him to do is catch the ball, make somebody pay for it, maybe make another guy miss, create explosives with your tight ends, 2 tight end sets.
See, I think Loveland, if you wanted to have the flexibility, so what they did in Detroit oftentimes with like those 2 tight ends was Laporta splits out wide, right? Like you have the flexibility to come out with 2 tight ends, 2 wide, and all of a sudden it just turns into 3 wide because Laporta can go run like a dig, like a number 3 wide receiver, and you have to respect it. To me, Loveland's the guy in this class that could go do that more readily than Warren. But Warren in your running game all of a sudden turns into a juggernaut with what they can
put him
do
next to Darnell
with 2 tight ends.
And so Jackson.
I'm interested in that thought. I know I heard Clay Harbor talking, the Chicago sports analyst, now former NFL tight end, talking about how he
Chicago
thought
legend
that
Clay Harbor
tight end is in play. Chicago bar legend, that's for sure. Maybe not Chicago football legend. My biggest need, though, I went with left tackle. Truly, like, they've done a great job of filling needs in terms of just like there's not a spot where it's like, man, they really have a problem. Honestly, it's either left tackle or running back where they're probably the weakest. But I think left tackle is where if you just got a guy, it's a top 10 pick, right? Your top 10 pick in the tackle class where there's going to be one of those top 3 there. I think Kelvin Banks is going to be on the board, and I would take him. I just think that your offensive line all of a sudden is a juggernaut. It's a juggernaut. There's no excuse then. No excuse for Caleb Williams.
Yep.
So that's who I went with.